It's Friday, June 16th. Let's talk PlayStation. Alright, so this past week, a lot of news stories going on, a lot of things we need to discuss. Some things coming out of E3, some hot button issues. So let's get right into it. As always, we will do our smaller news stories first. The first one being, Sony also announced during E3 Locoroco 2 Remaster, which is pretty cool. I mean, just like a month ago, they did the Locoroco Remaster, which they announced even previously back at PSX or E3, I don't even remember. But now you can do Locoroco 2, which is pretty cool. Another PlayStation staple getting added to the remaster treatment. Moving forward to some God of War news, I thought this one was very interesting, in particular if you are into God of War and you played the God of War games. The director, Cory Barlog, has stated that for God of War coming up, there's going to be no QuickTime events in the game, which we all know is kind of a big feature of God of War. I mean, QuickTime events are very heavily used in the franchise. Some would even say that God of War popularized the mechanic in, modern video games. But they're saying that there's going to be no QuickTime events in the game whatsoever. But Cory did quickly state that there is going to be certain variations of it. Kind of like, when you button mash over and over again and Kratos repeatedly, stabs something or whatever. Stuff like that's going to be still in it. But basically no time-sensitive QuickTime events where if you miss it and it initiates a failed sequence, that stuff's basically out of the game. So if you didn't already get the idea that this game's going to play much different than the previous God of War games, this will even tell you more so. Now, get into a new story, which is, I don't even really know what to think of it. Sly Cooper is getting a TV show now. So they're working on a TV show for Sly Cooper, and realistically, we still don't know anything about the movie, because there was a movie announced for Sly Cooper a long time ago. It was announced actually concurrently, I believe, with the Ratchet & Clank movie, which ended up coming out. But we've heard nothing from the Sly Cooper movie whatsoever. I don't know if it's canceled, or if they're still working on it, or if they're going to start production of it soon, but they are doing a TV show, which, I do have something to think of it. It's still, I always think it's a good idea. I still think Sony has great IP. They just never take advantage of it outside of video games. I've always said Ratchet and Clank and Sly Cooper are like some of the best contenders to do something like that, to adapt them to a movie or a TV show. So, go ahead and do it, and just make sure you do it right. But the problem is whenever they do these kind of things, they never market it, and it just becomes a waste of money and a waste of time, more or less. So I don't know. Maybe that's what this is going to be too. So this one is for the VR people. Bethesda released some details about Skyrim VR, kind of detailing sort of the options they have right now for moving around in the game. Because if you're a big advocate of VR, that's kind of a big thing, is how you can move around in a virtual space and how you can make it easy and more comfortable for the player. So right now, at E3, basically the demo that they had, they were using just strictly teleportation, but Bethesda is saying that they are working on full motion, moving around in the game with a DualShock 4, just based on smooth locomotion. And they are also working on PlayStation Move support, which you would initially think, okay, that should work, obviously, because two move wands, sword and shield, that seems to make sense. But we all know that Move controllers do not have analog sticks at all, so you kind of have to figure out how that would work. I would be interested to see how they will make that work, but yeah, you can count on using a regular DualShock 4 and moving around in the game. Teleportation, I would assume, wouldn't be that useful in the game long term, since it is kind of a massive game. You need to sneak around and stuff like that. I would just like to do a quick rant and say, why the hell are people so upset about Skyrim VR? Yes, I understand Bethesda is milking it, so to speak. They are beating this horse to death. But, come on, this is where people are going to draw the line with Skyrim-related announcements. Really. This one actually makes sense. This one is actually cool. Come on, are you kidding me? It's Skyrim in virtual reality. You can be in Skyrim. How are people upset about this? What it really falls down to is there are two camps of people. People that don't care about VR and played Skyrim maybe 5 years ago or something, and they've played the hell out of it already, and they just don't like VR or something, or they think VR is a gimmick. And then there are people that own PlayStation VR, or they have VR for PC or something, and they're thinking to themselves, this is so awesome, this is so cool, is this coming to Vive, is this coming to PC or whatever? It's like, Jesus Christ, when are people going to understand that this actually is a real medium that works very, very well? This is not just some peripheral, it is an entirely new platform, an entirely new way to play games. It actually works. This isn't like Move or Kinect. When are people going to get that? Whatever. Skyrim VR is going to be awesome. I can't wait. Alright, now we'll just move on to Shuhei Yoshida as a whole. Shuhei had a lot of things to say regarding the C3, so we'll get into the first one. He talked about the Shadow of the Colossus for PS4 coming up. He wanted to just sort of clarify what it is, which is that he is saying this is a remake, not a remaster, and terminology can get kind of mixed up. I think people just offhandedly say, oh, did you see that remake? Did you see that remaster? He wants to clarify that it's a remake based on the fact that the assets are, you know, entirely redone. The game looks, you know, groundbreakingly new from what it previously looked like, even from the PS3 port, which was, you know, still 1080p remaster, but, you know, yes, the assets for this one are completely redone. He also was quick to mention that things like the controllers are going to be the controls for the game are going to be modernized, which makes a lot of sense. The game is understandably a little, you know, dated in that sense. So that's all, you know, all well and good there. He did also note that you could still play the game in the old way if you do choose to do that. But that's great. I mean, I would just like to mention, dude, Blue Point Games does a really great job at either remasters, ports, or this upcoming remake. They just do a great job. I just kind of wish that Sony would just either buy them or contract them every 2 years and have them just work on more PlayStation classics and really touch them up good. You know, they do great work. Now, in terms of the press conference, Shuhei wanted to clear up a few details about that. I mean, the one thing being the complete lack of firm release dates, and Shuhei's comments are more or less him doubling down on what the company has said in the past. I don't even remember when they last said this, maybe a few months ago, maybe a year ago, but doubling down on the company's, you know, firm idea of like, hey, let's not announce games anymore until we have a very firm date or a very clear understanding of how close we are to releasing a game, which is great. I think that them doing this is a great idea. I mean, more publishers are finally wising up to this. I mean, how many times, like time and time again, big games get delayed over and over and over again. So, you know, basically they're saying we'll give a release window, which Sony did do for a few titles, but in terms of an actual date, they're not going to do until they're completely ready. So great, that's awesome. Now they just need to figure out how to not announce games so early anymore, because that's still a big problem too. I mean, it's fine if you're not going to, you know, announce the release date until the game is ready, but, you know, announcing a game 3-4 years out tends to be a little ridiculous. I know a lot of people are getting very fatigued with this as well. A lot of people wish that, you know, publishers would do more of the Bethesda style, where Bethesda will completely announce a new game and it's going to be ready in like 6 months to like less than a year for sure. But the thing is with Bethesda, you know, it kind of goes into like different morals and standards for each publisher in terms of how they want to announce titles. I mean, Bethesda has always been sort of like, I mean, I'm sure they want to surprise people and they want, you know, announcements to be on their terms, but, you know, sometimes if it just comes out, it comes out, and Bethesda will be like, yeah, this title's being worked on, or yeah, it's confirmed, but we'll show you when we're ready to show you. And then when they do, it's ready at that point. It's got to be a little bit tougher for a hardware manufacturer like Sony, because leaks are so frequent for them, and keeping inside information is ridiculously difficult. And since they are a hardware manufacturer, they want the announcements to be on their terms, and they want it to be a surprise for the fans, and they want to have a big impact on people. So I would have to figure that's why Sony just is still in kind of this place where they announce their games really early, because they want to have that impact on the consumer. Because if they were to hold these announcements, it just, you know, they get leaked, and they I'm telling you right now, nobody likes when that happens. But anyway, another thing that Shuhei mentioned was that they purposely held things back for this E3, and they still have more things to show later this year, which you would figure would be either TGS or PlayStation Experience. I mean, it might even be Gamescom or Paris Games Week, but though I'm pretty certain that they're not going to be there again this year at either show. But it's more or less what he's saying. And that goes into our next news story again, which is, it segues nicely to Sonys Jim Ryan, kind of lamenting the fact that, you know, their back is against the wall, right? I mean, they had so many good E3s the past 3-4 years. Now he's coming up to saying and defending the poor showing at E3, saying that you can't have blockbuster announcements every single year. They have to space out announcements accordingly, and I've said that a few times to you guys, but it's just like, that's why I called this show like I was thoroughly surprised the last like how many years at Sony shows. I was shocked that they were so good. That's why I knew this show. Going into this show, I knew it was not going to be that great, and I was really concerned that they weren't going to have anything to show. And that's Jim Ryan saying, yeah, like that's the case. Like, hey, all of our eggs are out of the basket at this point. You can't have it every year. The guy's going to do damage control. I don't blame him. But now I would hope that PSX is going to be better. I would hope E3 next year is going to be better, but I'm still concerned about E3 next year, because if these games don't hit early 2018, then that means that we're going to be in the same situation. We're going to have 2018 E3 with the same games, because these are the same projects that all these developers are working on. They're not going to be able to start working on a new game until they get these games out. So they might be in a rock and a hard place, but hopefully that won't be the case. All right, let's get into our first E3 controversy, one of two controversies, basically. This one is regarding Destiny 2. So let me do the timetable here for you. Destiny 2 at E3 this past week was confirmed to be 30 frames per second on Xbox One X. Now, this is kind of a big deal because if you remember, we discussed how Bungie was pretty upfront about Destiny 2 being 30 frames per second on PS4 Pro. And they even were very forward with saying that the game is 30 frames per second because PS4 just didn't have that extra horsepower to go 60. And I actually applauded Bungie at the time for being so upfront with consumers and being transparent with people and saying, hey, this is what it is and this is why it is. So that's great. But now we have a substantially more powerful console and it's still 30 frames per second, which raises the question for a lot of people, understandably. Oh, hey, wait a second. Sony and Activision have a deal here. Is Sony, forcing them? Is Sony forcing Bungie to, make the game, have parity with consoles so that their, version of the game doesn't seem inferior? And then Phil Spencer didn't help this because he's kind of out of the loop because he doesn't, he wouldn't know. But he's coming out and saying, well, I would hope that that's not the case. I would hope that, one company didn't force the other one to do this. I mean, that wouldn't be great for consumers. So that definitely raised a lot of questions for people. And then, so this news story basically ends with both Sony and Bungie saying that that's not the case. Sonys Jim Ryan directly responded to this saying, to my knowledge, we didn't, we're not asking Bungie to do anything of the sort. And Bungie is saying absolutely that is not the case. This is just what the game is at right now. And they even went on to say that once they have Xbox One X and the game, being released, that they could explore how far they can take the game in terms of resolution and frame rate for Destiny 2 on Xbox One X. So that's the end of the timetable, and now that's where all the discussion happens of who's right and who's wrong. Now here's the thing. This is actually pretty clear. It probably is what it is. Sony's probably telling the truth. Bungie's probably telling the truth. I mean, and Microsoft is obviously gonna act the way that they're acting because they don't know. But typically, I mean, most publishers and developers, this is how it is. This is how it always is. Developers will typically just go for parity on both consoles. It's not too frequent that they will go above and beyond. And this is me saying in regards to all of consoles. If the developer does have extra time or effort or resources to make the game a little bit prettier on one version over the other, they will do it. I mean, you can even look at back in the day with more recently 360 and PS3. I mean, 360, PS3 on paper was more powerful, but realistically, and also this was due to the cell processor, but PS3 versions were technically inferior to a lot of 360 games, to a lot of third-party 360 games. So it's just a matter of, but most developers, quite honestly, they aim for parity on both versions. Publishers don't want to sort of deal with that mess. I mean, a lot of times it might even be a case where the publisher is saying, you don't have time to pretty up this and that, just go for making the games looking good. And it's not, I mean, now Microsoft does have a bit of a history with doing the kind of, parity thing. They had a parity clause for, I believe it was ID at Xbox, where it was basically, if you're going to release a game on ID at Xbox, it has to release the same day as the, other console releases, and if that's not going to be the case, you can't release on ID at Xbox. That was a very real thing. I'm not entirely sure if they're still doing that anymore, but Microsoft does have a history of kind of having those sort of, anti-consumer policies, but we all know that Microsoft is very different nowadays. Like I said, I don't know if they're still doing that, but they do have that history, so I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but for the most part, everything in this sort of timeline is what it appears to be. I don't think there's any foul play between Sony or Bungie. Bungie doesn't have any, they're as transparent enough as it is if they didn't prove it to you already. And Sony doesn't do things like that. It's not in their history books, so I would be quite shocked if they were the ones behind this. But I would say for the Destiny 2 thing, it is what it is. The game will probably come out on Xbox One X at some point and look pretty damn good on it. And now for our final news story, controversy number 2, and this one is certainly warranted. There's a lot of discussion going on about this, so let's go over the timetable for this one. At Microsoft's show, they announced in terms of Minecraft, that they were going to be unifying all of Minecraft. Everybody was going to be able to play together, whether it was Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, or PC, or even mobile. They were all going to be playing Minecraft together. And then shortly after, it was kind of realized, like, hey, PlayStation 4 is not in that mix. What's going on there? and it's basically Sony saying no. Sony said no to being, to allowing Minecraft being crossplay with the, all the other versions of Minecraft. So Sonys Jim Ryan commented on this, and he had some interesting quotes. He said, "It's certainly not a profound philosophical stance we have against this. We've done it in the past. We're always open to conversations with any developer or publisher who wants to talk about it. Unfortunately, it's a commercial discussion between ourselves and other stakeholders, and I'm not going to get into the detail of that on this particular instance. We've got to be mindful of our responsibility to our install base, Minecraft. The demographic playing that, as well as I do, it's all ages, but it's also very young. We have a contract with the people who go online with us, that we look after them, and they're within the PlayStation curated universe. Exposing that, in many cases, our children to external influence we have no ability to manage or look after, it's something we have to think about very carefully." So this is Jim Ryan's comments on why they're not allowing crossplay. And this isn't just Minecraft, by the way. We'll also get into it in a second. Developer Psyonix, who they even announced this months ago, which is that they have crossplay, the foundation of crossplay for Rocket League pretty much laid down, and they can do crossplay for Rocket League whenever they want, between Xbox One, PS4. The game is also coming into Nintendo Switch now. They've got it locked and loaded as well. Sony is also saying no to them. Phil Spencer responded directly to this. He was quoted as saying, when talking to Jeff Gerstmann and Giant Bomb during E3, "I'll jump on another grenade on this one. The fact that somebody would make an assertion that somehow we're not keeping Minecraft players safe, I found, not only from a Microsoft perspective, but from a gaming industry perspective, I don't know why that has to become the dialogue. That doesn't seem healthy for anyone. I feel that we can do better with everything that we do. I feel great about our relationship with Minecraft. I just really found the whole discussion around safety with our game, and that somehow we wouldn't take that as a top priority, and frankly, through our parental controls on Xbox Live and everything else that we've done, shown that's incredibly important to us as a platform." Alright, so this one's very big. Let's really start unpackaging this and figuring out why this is the way it is. Now, there's a number of angles to sort of look at it, from Sony's perspective, from Microsoft's perspective. Now, Microsoft, the past how many years, has been doing a lot of goodwill gestures to customers. That's great. Obviously, that's why they want to do cross-network play. I think it's beneficial to everybody. It really doesn't harm anybody. It certainly doesn't harm Sony, in all honesty. It really doesn't. But the whole Sony side of things is Sony's currently the market leader. They have nothing to gain from this. And as I said, they have nothing to lose, but they have really nothing to gain from this. I believe I believe Jim Ryan's answer is a very good PR answer, but at the end of the day, it is somewhat bullshit. Phil's comment is, I feel, was upheld pretty well and professional. And it's understandable for him to act like that, especially since, they're the company that are kind of trying to unify everybody and make it a little bit more peaceful in terms of, getting along, I guess you could say. I mean, these are multi-billion-dollar companies all fighting for your dollar, but yeah, this is, I would say that, gaming industry as a whole, it is more of a tightly knit community. I appreciate Phil's kind of goodwill to customers and trying to just let people play wherever they want to play, right? That's cool. I mean, and they own Minecraft, so this is definitely, for them to keep the game running on all their platforms, to allow cross-network play, that's pretty cool. So honestly, I'm pretty upset with, Sony's sort of stance on this. But if you look at it, again, from the business side of things, the one thing that I think, Jim gave the bullshit answer, but I think the real Sony side of things is that they have 60 million plus PlayStation 4s out there. Why would you allow people the reason to, play the game, to allow another consumer to play the game on Xbox One or Nintendo Switch and not, that's a copy not being sold on PlayStation, more or less. Since they have the most units out there, they have sort of the most leeway with, making consumers play in their space. Since most people have a PS4, most people are going to be playing the game on PS4. Therefore, more people that want to play with their friends on PS4, they're going to need PS4s, and that's kind of another reason. That's probably, I would think, one of the most major reasons why Sony wants to do this. But another caveat to this is, at least for the Minecraft side of things, is that on Nintendo Switch, when this whole update and everything goes live for the game, on Nintendo Switch, you're going to need to log into Xbox Live, which is really surprising and weird, right? So it's weird to think about it but it is Microsoft's game, and so they're going to use their servers. Totally makes sense. There's no problem with that whatsoever. People are giving Microsoft shit for, doing this. I don't understand why they would give Microsoft shit for this. It's their fucking game. Of course they're going to make you use their servers. it is just weird, right, to use the Nintendo Switch and then you have to log in Xbox Live. So that is another thing I think right away that Sony's denying this. If you have to log into Xbox Live on a PlayStation 4, there's no fucking way Sony's going to allow that. No chance in hell. But then it begs the question, well, what about Rocket League? And it's like, well, okay, well, that's kind of what I'm getting, that's what I'm dialing back to in my original point. They have the most units out there. What do they have to gain? They have nothing to gain from this. I think this is just a situation of Sony being a few things. Number one, they're being way too cautious. I think they are being, not from Jim's BS answer about curating, the community and whatnot. I think they're just being way too cautious about the ramifications of it. And I think they're doing it from a standpoint of, since there's no real benefit to this, and since we have the most units out there, we have no real incentive to do this. I think this is the wrong move from Sony, absolutely. I think they should allow this. I think they are getting into a place where this is looking more like cocky Sony again. I'm not really liking it. They are the market leader, but they are doing a lot of things lately that are putting a sour taste in people's mouths, and whether that's the lack of quality games on PlayStation Plus, or them saying no to cross-network play, or their repeated stance of them not doing backwards compatibility, which, and you guys know my stance on it, which is that I understand their viewpoint, and realistically, if I were Sony, I'd probably say the same thing. I probably wouldn't do anything about backwards compatibility. It's just that when you have these many things going on, and Sony's number one, it doesn't look good for them right now. It's a lot of bad press going their way. So a lot of pressure is being put on them right now. And so it'll be interesting to see what they'll follow up with, because, will they cave? Will they allow this, or will they, hold their ground and say, no, we're not doing cross-network play? I hope that they would back down. I hope they allow this. I don't know how they would do the Minecraft thing, though. That I don't know. I'm drawing a blank, because if Microsoft is saying that for sure you have to log into Xbox Live to cross-network play, there's no way Sony's going to allow that to happen. Some people like to bring up instances of, like, if you remember Portal 2 on PS3, you actually could log into a Steam account, so people are like, wow, you could do that. Those were in no way, shape, or form direct competitors. Steam was not competing with PlayStation at all. So, there's tons of situations in games where you could log into Square Enix servers, or you can log into an EA account or an Activision account. There are tons of instances like that, but those are not direct competitors. So the whole Minecraft thing, I don't know what they're going to do. So that for all I know, may never happen. Rocket League, for example, that would be held on Psyonix's servers. I think Sony should do that, and I think they should come to some sort of agreement with the whole Minecraft thing. Maybe just don't show an Xbox Live logo, or do some sort of passive login. I don't know. I'm totally at a loss for words for this, but I totally get it why they would deny that. But to deny cross-network play as a whole, I think is a very poor move on Sony's part. It just makes them look bad. You keep championing that you're for the players, and a lot of in the past year or so, you haven't been for the players, and that's not looking good on you. Just because you're number one doesn't mean you can get away with everything. You need to, treat your consumers with a little bit of leniency and respect, and as of right now, that's not something that they're doing. Another point people like to make is that if Microsoft were the market leader right now, this isn't something they would be doing, and understandably, it would be an entirely different story if Microsoft was the market leader, but see, if Microsoft was the market leader, I think today would be drastically different. You might still have a Kinect being shipped in every single box. The UI could look entirely different. Their entire approach to game development could be everything. It could be substantially different if Microsoft was currently the market leader. So I don't, that whole spin of the argument, I don't think necessarily makes a whole lot of sense, because not only would their stance on crossplay network be different, but everything would be different. So I don't think that necessarily holds up. But yeah, I don't think this is right on Sony's part. Purely based on the fact that this is something that just benefits, all people, and Sony's really only looking out for themselves. And yeah, I get it. They're a business. I always say that. I always sometimes people like to look at me as sort of a corporate apologist, because I always see it from the sort of business perspective. But that's what you have to do. Nobody seems to do it like that. Everyone wants to get all emotional about consoles and video games. I think that's silly, and it's a shock that I even still do this YouTube channel when there's so much hate and vitriol regarding video games and people getting so pissy about it. But That's how you have to look at it. I just think this is something that Sony's in the wrong. But to come to an agreement, I think, is an entirely different beast. At least with the Minecraft thing. So we'll see how it all turns out. Anyway, those are some of the news stories I want to talk about with you guys this week. My camera is dying, so I gotta finish this up quick. Yeah, E3's over. Hopefully E3 will be a lot better. I mean, there's still some good stuff coming out of it. We can't deny that. There's still a lot of great games coming out. Just trying to promote some positivity. You know, there's still a lot of awesome things that we can play by the end of this year. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you guys next Friday.